Hello everyone, I'm Renown0. We are back again talking about Alyssa Mercante's Trans Lifeline charity is worse than we may have thought. Now this is of course coming to us from Smash JT, and this is of course the thing that Alyssa Mercante bragged about donating to over on a Saturday Night Hypnosis over on the Hypnotic channel. Shout out to him as well. And we're going to get into all of this. It seems like Smash JT has dug a little bit deeper into this whole thing, and we're going to find out just what he found. This, of course, is from SmashJT.com. Previously, I scratched the surface of what I thought was just a simple questionable charity called Trans Lifeline, supported and brought to light by Kotaku's senior editor, Alyssa Mercante. From Kiwi Farm's investigations to embezzlement of misappropriated funds, it ended up being the biggest iceberg of hidden criminal activity in a charity that I've ever witnessed. As time passed and more information came to light, nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I've discovered about this abhorrent case. This story is absolutely insane. The beginning of the debacle. Earlier this year, the board launched an investigation into the financial transactions of Nina and Greta and concluded, with the advice of legal and financial professionals, that there had been significant spending of Trans Lifeline funds outside the scope of the current budget. Much of the spending was on an unauthorized project, neither approved of by the board nor made clear to donors. And this is, of course, going to be a video as an update to the last video I made about this, which Greta and Nina sincerely believed was for the good of the trans community. Of course, it's not. And again, trans kids don't exist. Unfortunately, the unauthorized project ran afoul of Trans Lifeline's obligations of these tax laws. The original charity owners, Nina Chabot and Greta Martella, were involved in significant unauthorized spending of Trans Lifeline funds. This spending was outside the scope of the approved budget and involved a project not authorized by the board or disclosed to donors. In his original video covering the situation, that being Smash JT's original video, I had figured time had passed and they simply grew out of the pivotal roles and introduced new blood to the organization, but nope, they were booted for illegal usage of donations and funds. It was so bad that they had to make a public statement about the illegal usage of funds and fired the founders, and that's just the beginning. Legal and financial concerns. The unauthorized project led to issues with compliance regarding these tax laws, necessitating a formal investigation by the board with the advice of legal and financial professionals by the way of taxation and stuff. Although the founders' departure was supposedly planned, if we're to take their word for it, the financial irregularities accelerated their exit from the organization. Nina and Greta agreed to adhere to a payment plan to return the disputed funds to Trans Lifeline, indicating a serious financial misstep that required rectification. Yikes. The announcement acknowledged that the situation may be distressing to the trans community with a huge negative impact on the organization's reputation and community trust. Of course, most of these are all scams. It didn't stop them, though. Kiwi Farms investigate and is shunned for doing so. Kiwi Farms described in detail the tactics used in hashtag #DropKiwiFarms as experienced from the inside. Say what you want about Kiwi Farms, but when a corporate agenda is actively trying to hide behind being anti-trans as a way to silence, remove, and ultimately attempt to shut down their website, I have serious issues with it. Trans Lifeline was operated by Greta and Nina. These organizers would post extravagant lifestyle photos on their public Instagrams. Meanwhile, the Trans Lifeline hotline service rarely had anyone online to accept emergency calls. This led the Kiwi Farms users to suspect they were stealing from their charity, so we began documenting both their lifestyle and their hotline's performance or lack thereof. Documents leaked to us by people who have worked with them showed that there was almost no organization, no internal support structure, and no training. Transgender people recruited by TLL to be call agents would then be put online to deal with the immediately at-risk self-deletion transgender people with scant information on how to actually help. Some callers reported being hung up on. Operators reported trauma from having to answer life for passing phone calls without any idea of what to do or say. Years later, and thanks to information made available only on the Kiwi Farms, they would be ousted from the organization for fraud. Trans Lifeline's operators would later file under penalty of perjury that Greta and Nina had injured hundreds of thousands of dollars. This would begin the long trend of transgender activists saying, ignore the bad things on Kiwi Farms, they're made up, with the punchline being that we'd end up being proven right over time and with damage done that could have been mitigated if we were trusted sooner. Yeah, definitely going to trust a bunch of people who are against Kiwi Farms exposing this nonsense. For those interested in a full deep dive of the Substack exposing this institutional censorship and usage of power, the link for it is all here. Well, holy crap, does the situation ever get deep? As deep as you want to go, it's a never-ending rabbit hole. Back to the specifics listed on the Trans Lifeline website. Trans Lifeline's support initiatives include paying bail and providing legal assistance to trans individuals, even if they have been found guilty of crimes, which is absolutely disgusting. Under their criminalization policy, their approach is rooted in the belief that the legal system is biased against trans people, often leads to unfair treatment and incarceration. So they're trying to be as oppressed as blacks, because they say the exact same thing about black people, that they're unfair treatment and incarceration. Jesus. By supporting this trans lifeline cause, donors are actively contributing to efforts to release trans individuals from prison regardless of their criminal convictions, suggesting that the world is inherently unjust towards trans people and that helping them navigate or avoid the consequences of the legal system is a way to combat systemic discrimination, even if it means assisting those labeled as criminals by the law. So basically, they're fighting in the oppression Olympics to see who's the most oppressed. As covered by Hypnotic during Saturday Night Hypnosis above, in addition to assisting criminals break free, they also assist in name changes and alternate IDs to assist trans people in hiding. Double yikes. $1.14 million given to trans people for IDs, non-consensual hospitalization, and medical discrimination. The organization takes the stance that trans people often face discrimination in medical settings, lacking access to appropriate gender-affirming care. It's not real. Trans Lifeline avoids involving emergency services and crises unless explicitly requested, due to the potential for increased trauma from involuntary hospitalization and lack of competent care. Because, again, gender-affirming care is not a real thing. You're just helping someone live their mental illness. Using back-alley, unethical, and aggressive approaches, they push gender affirmation, ruining the lives of potentially psychologically ill individuals. They push against institutionalization for people in dire need for mental institutions. All for what? Because they identify as trans? Apparently so. According to Trans Lifeline, economic hardships disproportionately affect trans people, especially trans people of color, because of course it always goes back to people of color. Due to factors like unemployment, lack of housing, and healthcare access, Trans Lifeline provides financial support through microgrants to help alleviate these burdens, focusing on redistributing resources directly to those in need without requiring proof of use, aka socialism. But who ultimately decides who is trans and how much money is given? This opens up the doorway for tremendous scrutiny and potential money laundering situations. Ism and phobia policies grow. Oh my god, this is so... Trans Lifeline then goes on to talk about the interconnectedness of ism and phobia and other forms of discrimination. They prioritize racial equity, gross, and reparations, gross, because they reparations for what? This is like the same nonsense I say about reparations for blacks. They don't need them. To address systemic injustices affecting BIPOC trans individuals, advocating for structural solutions like the abolition of policing and incarceration, no, which ultimately, ironically, is IST. Then we go to the phobia, and my goodness, the organization highlights concerns for the impact of quote-unquote colonialism, oh my god, that word again, and state harm on trans individuals, especially focused on migrants and indigenous people, because of course, it's only bad when it happens to trans if they're people of color or indigenous or whatever, you know. I don't think it's all a mental illness to me. They support trans migrants and call for the abolition of ICE, advocating for full rights and asylum for trans immigrants while providing peer support in both English and Spanish. Oh my god, it's so much nonsense. Trans Lifeline challenges the pathologization, I guess, of trans identities and seeks to provide affirming care for neurodivergent individuals and those with disabilities. They advocate for disability and justice and offer assistance. There's no such thing, by the way, it's just justice. There's nothing before it. Assistance with accessing resources, emphasizing the importance of self-determination and community care over traditional medical models, which means going against biology. Hiring practices at Trans Lifeline. You already know where this is going. We value varied experiences and backgrounds and ensure that interviewees reflect trans BIPOC communities. The typical DEI nonsense. Trans Lifeline states on their hiring page that they require 50% BIPOC, which in itself is inherently racist and discriminatory towards white people. Because to these types of people, it's always okay to discriminate against white people. But of course, according to this trade, that's perfectly okay, regardless of what actual employment laws state. They also require their workers to be trans. But why? What if someone is qualified to speak to another in a crisis that doesn't identify as trans? Why is that a requirement? Strange. Tebow here says, it's not just the executives are making six figures while the charity spends more than it brings in. They also don't pay any of their hotline workers and only answer calls Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. All this while they actively badmouth traditional hotlines, aka self-deletion hotlines. Trans Lifeline offers their peer support hotline specifically for trans and questioning individuals, and they guarantee that callers can speak with a trans or non-binary, again, 2 more fake things, because it's all mental illness. Pure and complete anonymity and confidentiality without the risk of non-consensual active rescue involving emergency services. Despite reportedly making millions of revenue annually, Trans Lifeline's hotline is only operational Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time, leaving enormous gaps in availability during weekends and outside these hours. A limited schedule could be frustrating for individuals seeking support during critical times, particularly when call volumes are high and wait times are longer. I doubt that's even ever going to be a thing. The percentage of people that think they're the opposite gender are minuscule at best. Regardless of why it has funding or who is donating to it, ultimately is inconsequential. The main problem is that they're being championed by a portion of the gaming community, proving once again that these journalists, quote-unquote journalists, like Alyssa Mercante, are really just activists in disguise, and it's absolutely disgusting to see being promoted by the industry at large. So yes, a hotline that helps mentally ill people get help for their mental illness, I guess. All this is so boring. It's like these guys, these journalists love to virtue signal about how much they help people and all this other nonsense. It's like, just be a games journalist, man. That's all we require of someone who's a game journalist. Just provide games journalism, and that's it. Nobody cares about your lame virtue signaling, especially not from someone as horrible as Alyssa Mercante is, someone who has tried to go after people, including, Smash JT's wife, which is basically what caused his channel to boom. And I'm sure he thanks you every single day for you doing that, specifically because now he's more popular than ever and gets a lot more views than Kotaku ever will. Thank you all for checking out this video. I really do appreciate all the new subscribers, returning subscribers, new viewers, and returning viewers. If you do like this video, hit that like button, comment below what you feel about all this, subscribe for more content, hit the bell for notifications, set the bell to all. That way you'll get a notification anytime I post a new video or live stream, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.